The Olympian god Hermes was conceived by Zeus and Maia, the daughter of the Titan god Atlas. According to Homeric hymn number 4 to Hermes, Maia was shy and gave birth to her son alone in a cave in a mountain called Selene. Hermes was a little rascal right from the start, and soon after being born busted out of his swaddling and wandered outside. There he saw a tortoise which he killed and used to invent the lyre. After a quick jam session, Hermes then set out to the region of Pieria where the cattle of his half-brother Apollo grazed. He made soft sandals to hide his footprints and then drove 50 of Apollo's cattle away from their pasture, having them walk backwards to make them harder to track. On his way, Hermes passed by an old man tending to his vineyard and made a polite bribe/threat to buy his silence. Then Hermes hid the cows away near the river Alpheus, but not before sacrificing two and spreading their hides on rocks. He then returned home and slipped back into his swaddling clothes. Son, were you just up to some cunning mischief? No. I'm gonna get smited, aren't I? The next day, Apollo realized some of his cattle were missing and set to searching for them. He came upon the same old man and asked him if he'd seen anything. And stuck between the wrath of a vindictive god and the wrath of a vindictive god, he decided to snitch on Hermes. Apollo then showed up in Maia's cave and demanded a confession from Hermes or else he'd be tossed into Tartarus. But Hermes was just like, "What? I didn't steal any cows. I'm just a whittle baby. I don't even know what a cow is, teehee." Apollo wasn't buying this, so the two brothers went up to Olympus for Zeus to judge their case. Hermes managed to Better Call Saul his way out of self-incrimination, much to Zeus's amusement. Nonetheless, he commanded Hermes to show Apollo where he hid the cattle without any more trickery. As the brothers arrived at the river Alpheus, Apollo saw the two hides left from Hermes' sacrifice, and became a little freaked out imagining how strong Hermes would become if he could already skin 2 whole cows as a newborn baby. So Apollo attempted to tie Hermes up with 2 branch withes, only for him to pull his Uno reverse card and command the branches to grow and encircle the cattle. Then, in order to pacify the situation, Hermes busted out his lyre and started playing some sick tunes. Whoa, those are some sick tunes. You can have all these cows if you give me that instrument. And so Hermes gave Apollo the lyre in exchange for the cattle, and the two quickly became besties for life. And Hermes became the messenger of the Olympian gods as well as of Hades, and a patron to travelers, herders, messengers, thieves, and all others who use the roads, even the dead on their way to the afterlife. And there's plenty more of Zeus's kids to talk about in this video, including one that might surprise you. But first, a word from my sponsor, Manscaped. Ever since blossoming into adulthood, I struggled to find a way to get rid of all of my ever-growing face and body hair, but I couldn't find a solution. I was resigned to wasting away in a prison of my own hair like a lost domesticated sheep. That is, until I discovered Manscaped, the global lifestyle brand trusted by over 8 million men to keep their foliage in check. Their latest innovation in the field of manscaping is the Beard Hedger, with its built-in zoom wheel that lets you switch between 20 different length settings on the fly. And you can get the Beard Hedger Pro Kit for all these extra accessories, including scissors, a brush, a comb, beard oil, beard balm, beard shampoo. Okay, I genuinely didn't know there were so many different substances you could put on beards. Now, obviously, I usually keep my face pretty clean-shaven, but every now and then I get a little lazy, and then it becomes really difficult to shave with just a safety razor. And it never occurred to me until now that I could use a beard trimmer to cut it down to a more manageable length before I shave. This is probably a really obvious thing that most men already know, but as for me, well, in the wise words of George Washington, Eto bleh. If you're ready to get your forest under control, you can click the link in the description and use promo code W at checkout for 20% off your Manscaped purchase, plus free shipping. That's double YOO for 20% off and free shipping. Thanks for your support, Manscaped. Now let's get back to Zeus's kids. Now, you're probably familiar with the story of the birth of Aphrodite as first told by Hesiod, where Cronus, leader of the Titans, castrated his father Uranus and flung his severed genitals into the ocean. This produced foam, which over time formed into the goddess, who then washed up on the eastern Mediterranean island of Cyprus. This is by far the most well-known myth of Aphrodite's origin. However, other sources, including none other than Homer, believed her to actually be yet another daughter of Zeus and the Titan goddess Dione. In a way, Aphrodite could be considered one of the most powerful Olympians, as she had the ability to inspire ravenous lust in all of the gods. The only ones outside of her influence were the maiden goddesses Athena, Artemis, and Hestia, each of whom vowed never to marry. story. Clearly, she got a real kick out of making Zeus in particular fall in love with mortals. I mean, I had to start this multi-part video series just to cover some of his most famous kids after all. But one time, Zeus decided to turn the tables on her. In Homeric hymn number 5 to Aphrodite, he made her fall madly in love with a handsome Trojan man named Anchises. Now, you may find yourself asking, wait, how does Zeus have the power to do that if he's not a love god? And, well, this story is a good example of why terms like god of love, god of the sky, god of whatever aren't always useful. In general, I wouldn't think of gods as having a set of super specific powers exclusive to their domains. In practice, gods can bend the laws of nature however they want, and their god of X title is more of an indicator of the ways they usually choose to exercise their abilities. What I'm saying is Greek gods aren't like Pokemon. Anyway, Aphrodite was super down bad for Anchises, but didn't want to be seen lusting after a mortal, so she disguised herself as a human and went to him claiming to be a Phrygian princess betrothed to him by order of Hermes. However, after they finished doing the thing that gets YouTube videos demonetized, she revealed her true godly form to Anchises and told him she would bear his son, the Trojan hero Aeneas, and place him in the care of the mountain nymphs for the first 5 years of his life before being returned to his father. But should Anchises ever tell someone that he, a mere mortal, begot a son by the goddess Aphrodite, he'd get the living shit smited out of him. So Anchises probably didn't appreciate that someone wrote a hymn about this story. Aphrodite had a number of other lovers, both mortal and immortal, but she still can't hold a candle to Zeus's body count, probably partially because Zeus was even willing to hook up with his own siblings, not just his queen wife Hera, but also Demeter, goddess of the harvest. The two of them had Persephone, who was then betrothed to her uncle Hades. I covered that classic story in another video. Persephone is often called goddess of spring, but that's another misleading title. It's really her mother who ushers in springtime when she returns from the underworld each year. Persephone's primary role, based on surviving evidence, was as queen of the underworld. In mythology, we often see her passing judgment on mortals, sometimes showing favor to heroes like Heracles and Orpheus who ventured into the underworld on daring quests, or imposing eternal punishment on those who disrespected her in life, like Pirithous, who had his ass permanently stuck to a stone for attempting to seduce the goddess. Now, it was also with Persephone, his own daughter, that Zeus decided to take his sexual depravity a step further and conceived the Orphic god Zagreus. Yes, that Zagreus. He was an extremely obscure god, most closely associated with the Orphic cults, and very little was written about him. Which is easy to understand. The chief god committing double incest probably would have been a little too much for mainstream Hellenic culture to swallow. And that's saying something. Though for what it's worth, there's one early fragmentary source claiming his father was actually Hades, which Supergiant gladly took and ran with. Most surviving accounts of Zagreus come at the very tail end of classical antiquity, as polytheism was fading away in the Greek and Roman world. And in these sources, there's clear influence from the Egyptian Osiris myth, which probably came into play during the Hellenistic period. The most detailed source covering Zagreus is the Dionysica, a 5th century epic poem by Nonus, which seems to stitch together various earlier accounts in an attempt to form a coherent narrative of the god's life. How well this reconstructed narrative actually reflects Orphic tradition, I have no idea. Our tale begins with Persephone hidden away in a cave by her mother to protect her from suitors. Zeus, however, took on the form of a serpent and snuck inside to assault her, and then she gave birth to Zagreus. As a baby, Zagreus climbed onto Zeus's Olympian throne brandishing thunderbolts, a clear omen he was destined to inherit his father's status as king of the gods. This was of course a major threat to Hera, who would be replaced as Zeus's highest consort if another woman bore her husband's heir. So she goaded the Titans into doing away with the kid. They disguised their faces with chalk and then went to the godling, distracting him with toys. And then once Zagreus let his guard down, the Titans chopped him up into pieces. Zeus then took his son's torn up heart and mixed it into a drink and gave it to Semele, who then conceived Dionysus. And now, if you're curious about Zagreus' sister Melanoe, also a child of Zeus and Persephone, you can check out this other video I've already made. Hey, I'm pretty good at this YouTube algorithm thing.